Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's your Kiwi Connection here, Kim07, and today we have another 280X Showdown. So this time we're going to put up Asus's DC2, Directcu2 280X up against Gigabyte's Windforce 280X. So let's get straight into it then. So size-wise, these cards are somewhat similar. So we have the Asus card coming in at 284mm long to the 285mm long of the Gigabyte card. 144mm wide for the Asus. 126mm wide for the Windforce, so the Asus card's quite a bit fatter. And they're both 38mm tall. So they're quite similar overall in size, just the Asus card's a bit fatter, but that should be fine for pretty much every case unless you got a real small one. Now, clock speeds. So this is where it varies a little bit. So the Asus card comes in at 1070 megahertz on boost on the GPU, where the Windforce comes in at 1100 on boost. So the Windforce has a little bit of an edge, 30 megahertz more, but then the memory is where there's another big difference. So we're seeing 6400 megahertz on the Asus Directcu2 and 6000 on the Windforce. So the Windforce has slightly higher GPU speed, but a decent amount slower memory speed. So we'll see how that plays out in the benchmarks. But before we go into that, we'll just have a quick talk about the cooler. So obviously this is a triple fan Gigabyte Windforce cooler. It's been around for a while. You're probably familiar with it. They've put this cooler on loads of things. They haven't changed it in ages, so it's pretty tried and true and good, and most people know about it. The Asus card is their Directcu2, which also has been around a little while. So this employs two fans. One fan's a Cooltech fan, which I spoke about in the unboxing, which is sort of a hybrid fan that's kind of like the reference blower, but also pushes air through the fins at the same time. And it also has the direct copper touching the GPU itself, although, as I've said before, there have been issues with Asus taking this Directcu2 cooler straight off the 780 and 780 Ti and putting it on these AMD cards, and not all of the heat pipes, that direct copper, is actually touching the GPU itself. Only 3 of 5 are. So that's obviously going to, make the cooling a lot worse. So there've been a few things with that, but just looking at it, it looks pretty beastly, and there's big heat pipes on the Asus card as well. So without further ado, let's go straight into the benchmarks. So, up first, Furmark. Now, I can't actually give you what the Asus card did in Furmark because it never actually completed. So I'll get into that a little bit later. With the Gigabyte card to 23 frames per second. And just so you have something to reference it with, that was about 1 frames per second slower than the Toxic. But let's just skip Furmark for this one, and I'll explain a bit later. Let's just go straight to Unigem Valley then. Asus DC2, 46.1 frames per second. This is on the Extreme HD preset. The Windforce, 46.2 frames per second average, so nothing in it. Onto Heaven, 4.0. This is DirectX 11, everything maxed out. The Asus DC2, 38 frames per second, average flat. The Windforce, 38.1. So again, there's just barely by the tiniest bit the Windforce beats it. Now OpenGL, Heaven 4.0 again, everything maxed out again. Both cards, 31 frames per second flat. So you're starting to see they're very close. So the extra GPU, I think, on the Windforce sort of balances out with the Asus's higher memory speed. Now Tomb Raider on the Asus DC2, 66.5. And this is everything maxed out, remember, without VSync. On the Windforce, 67.4 average frames. So we're seeing a little bit of a difference there, about 1 frame going towards the Windforce. So, but not barely anything. And lastly, BioShock Infinite. This is on everything maxed out again, without VSync. On the DC2, 98 frames per second average. On the Windforce, 95.6 frames per second average. So that one was a little bit funny. The Asus seems to have won it by the tiniest, well, it's a few frames, but it's still a tiny amount, nothing to be considered. So, yeah, the benchmarks don't really say a lot. These cards are pretty much evenly matched on the board. I mean, with different games, one might perform a little bit better than others, depending on things, but, you know, there's not much in it. Nothing to consider one better than the other in terms of benchmarks. So that leads us into cooling. Now this is where I really want to talk about, and this is where all the rumors and everything about that Asus DC2 card lie. So, in Firmark, this is running 15 minutes, 4 times MSAA, and I just leave it, do its thing, and then I take the highest temperature I see, and the highest fan speed that I see. Now on the Asus card, we didn't even get it. It wouldn't even complete it. So the first time I set it, I set it to run, and then so I'm sitting here and it runs 15 minutes, right? So I'll go on my phone and look stuff up or play some games, something like that. And then the computer shut off, and I thought, well, what's going on here? So and it's booted back up and stuff. I thought that was a bit weird. And so I ran it again, the same test. This was with the Asus card in. And then this time I actually watched what was happening. I'm watching the temperatures. Now I've heard these cards, the 280Xs, they don't like really, they can get a bit grumpy after 80 degrees Celsius. So they say generally it's good to keep them below 80. But then the thermal limit is 85. And I was watching this Asus card and it went up 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85. Bam! Computer shuts off. That's strange. No other card I've ever tested has ever actually shut off from Firmark. Then I thought, well, the fan speed was getting up there, but it wasn't, 100%. Maybe it's just a cooling design that needs a lot of fan speed. So I manually set it to 100%. I thought, 100%, yeah, that'll get through it. No. It went through again. It got up to 83, 84, and then I stopped the test. The screen was starting to get a bit funny, and everything was getting a bit grumpy. I didn't want it to shut off again, so I stopped it, and it just couldn't even do it, not even at 100% fan speed. So, very disappointing. However, the Windforce, it can do it. It hits 76 degrees Celsius max, so you still got 9 degrees before that thermal limit, and 4 degrees before it hits 80. But that was at 90% fan speed, so that Windforce is really going. But, I mean, again, at least it can cool it. Then, when I ran Unigine Heaven, I take the highest temperature in that again, and it's a lot shorter of a benchmark. The Asus card went up to 77 degrees by the time the benchmark had ended, and I shut it off. The Gigabyte card went to 70, so it was already, the Asus card just doing a Heaven 4.0 benchmark. There's DirectX 11, everything maxed out. So it is a big load, but still, it was almost, it was higher than the Gigabyte Windforce went in that 15 minutes of Firmark. So the cooling, the Gigabyte, the Windforce is just, these Asus cards, the 290 was bad, and this was bad, the 280X, so I've really lost faith in them. When I get, one day, hopefully into the NVIDIA cards, it'll be interesting to see how the Directcu2 performs on something like the 780 or 780 Ti, and we'll see if it can redeem itself, which it should by rights, because I haven't heard anything bad about them on that, but still, this was just shocking. I can't believe you can actually release a graphics card like that. So, now we get that all out of the way, let's get on to noise. Both these cards are pretty loud. Obviously the Gigabyte gets really high up in the fan speed, and the Asus card was, I will say it was decently quiet, at least at idle and stuff like that. General usage, it was decent. But I'll let you judge for yourself. So this is what the Asus Directcu2 sounds like at idle. This is what the Gigabyte Windforce 280X sounds like at idle. And this is the Asus DC2 at load. This is in the Unigine Heaven, no, Unigine Valley Extreme HD preset benchmark I did. And here is the same benchmark again with the Gigabyte Windforce. So, I don't know. I can't really say this goes either way. Maybe they're pretty similar. The Gigabyte card does seem to ramp up a lot, although when it does, the fans don't seem to make as much noise. I guess because there's 3 of them and they're a lot smaller. It's hard to say, but honestly, they're both pretty similar, so I wouldn't call it either way, really. So overall, what am I going to say? Well, you've probably guessed already. The Gigabyte card has to win this. It has better cooling. They're pretty much the same performance, but I mean, you don't want the card shutting off, like your computer shutting off in the middle of a game or something like that. So the Gigabyte, plus the Gigabyte then has room to overclock it if you want. You can bump that memory up to the same as Asus, and then you really see this performance gain. So yeah, just the Gigabyte wins in this one, but it isn't as good as the Toxic from Sapphire that we did previously, because I said the Toxic beat the Gigabyte. So far, out of the 280Xs, the Toxic is the one to beat, but this Asus one is just, it's not good. The 290 was the exact same. I can't recommend either of them. So yeah, Asus, sort it out. Well, I hope you like this video. Leave a like if you really enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys next time.